Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining the ISG Smart Talk, the promise of automation in times of crisis. This ISG Smart Talk is being recorded, and the replay will be available to share with your colleagues at the same link as the live event you're listening to now. Feel free to submit a question at any time during the presentation by using the Ask a Question box on the left side of your window. If we don't get to your question during the webinar, or if you're listening to a recording of this broadcast, we'll answer your questions in a follow-up email. I will now hand things off to Jeff Augustine to kick off today's ISG Smart Talk.
Thanks very much. Jeff Augustine here. Before we get into any of the comment, I wanted to spend a moment and just talk to really each of the participants personally. I'm certain, quite certain, that based on the odds out there that many of you know someone or perhaps someone in your family, a friend, hopefully not, but perhaps even you personally have been affected directly by this virus. Perhaps you know a healthcare worker or a first responder that's working to help us defeat this. And the message I just wanted to leave to you is our thoughts are with everybody. We'll get through this together. And so on behalf of Mike Connors, the CEO of ISG, Chip Wagner, our CEO of ISG Automation, and really all of the ISG leadership team, I wanted to wish everyone all the best for safety, for health, as we all fight this virus and this pandemic. So with that, again, I am Jeff Augustine. I'm a partner with the ISG Automation practice. I've been with ISG for about 8 years. I've been in this business for, 30 plus years in a variety of different ways. But we're driving business in our automation practice currently with ISG. I have the pleasure of being joined by two colleagues today. Wayne Butterfield, who is a director in our automation practice, hails out of the UK. Wayne is one of our brightest minds in terms of cognitive automation and all things automation for our business. We lean on Wayne quite heavily for thought leadership and really best practices when we're talking about all concepts around automation. And Wayne will carry the preponderance of the material that we're going to cover with you all today. Also, certainly from Automation Anywhere, James Denning. And Automation Anywhere, while we as ISG are really work with several partners out there, the Automation Anywhere relationship is very dear and valued to us. We do a lot in the marketplace with them, going to market jointly. James really leads the European operation for Automation Anywhere, really setting that up. And a pleasure to have both James and Wayne join me on the call today. As I really think about it, the question is of why are we all here? And other than the obvious, had we not had a pandemic that's really driving behaviors and actions and causing its own disruption in the world markets, in many cases, transformation to digital workers comes from messaging throughout the organization. In some cases, it's a CEO, CIO, CFO. But in this day and age, we're seeing the virus effect, the COVID-19 effect, really becoming a primary driver for why digital workers are becoming more and more important. And statistically, we see this in our buyer intent as we survey the marketplace looking at the behaviors of buyers out there. We're seeing a 158% increase. So we can go into statistics and algorithms and why that all is. But suffice it to say, there is a huge increase in demand for digital workers in this environment. Let's face it, they don't have an issue when it comes to work from home, and they don't catch a virus. So the intent of driving towards digital workers, clearly the uptick is upon us. So with that, maybe we take a moment, and James, I wonder if you might share with us some of the things that you're seeing around new and existing problems that the marketplace perhaps are being amplified with the effect of this virus. James?
Oh, thanks for that. And I thought the words at the top, those are ones that I'd like to reiterate. This is an awful thing. We've thought a lot. The whole global pandemic made us stop for a second and take a little step back, because businesses have many problems. Businesses have issues. There are things they need to do. There are challenges they have. There's disruption they face in their day-to-day operations. And what we've seen with COVID-19 is that, some of those problems have been amplified. some of the existing problems are amplified, and also there are some new problems. How do you deal with almost your entire workforce having to work from home is one of the big ones. And we kind of looked at the world and split our thinking and the things we're doing. We split them into three chunks. Now, just talk about those quickly. The first one was, as a responsible technology vendor, how can we support people actively in the fight? And there's a bunch of stuff we can do. We are doing. We're providing free software and training to companies either engaged in research, vaccine research, or to primary healthcare providers. Anything we can do, this is where automation is very good. Anything we can do to be able to take some of the administrative burden away from people who have more important things to do fighting COVID-19, whether they're dealing with patients, whether they're doing research into vaccines, whether they're doing other things. If there are day-to-day routine things that can be automated, one of the things we really wanted to do was help them automate those. The second one is businesses are being disrupted. Businesses, they need to keep the lights on, they need to keep paying their staff, they need to keep people in gainful employment. How could automation help them deal with some of those disruptions? One really good example was in Germany. There is a government program where people can apply for funding for the government, but it's a slightly unwieldy and slightly bureaucratic process to do, to fill in the forms that you need to send off to the, forgive my pronunciation, the Bundesagentur für Arbeit. So we provided automation for free to any company. 650,000 companies have requested that funding from the government over the last 3 weeks. And the government expects it'll encompass up to 12 million workers. We've built an automation. We're going to make it available to all those companies to help them fill in that form to reduce that administrative impact. Because we have this philosophy about computers and automations are very good at doing certain things. Humans are very, very good at doing other types of tasks. And dealing with the unexpected, dealing with something like a pandemic, coming up with new strategies, coping mechanisms is something that computers are bad at and humans are very good at. So anywhere where we can take workload away from people and leave them to do the stuff that people are so good at, dealing with the unexpected. The third thing we want to do was to support the wider community. There are people who, through no fault of their own now, are not doing the work that they normally do day in, day out. And we want to try and help some of those people by providing them with, in our world, automation tooling, training and guidance on how to use automations, how to become automation engineers, even certifications. So we're providing a whole bunch of those things. So supporting people in the fight, helping businesses mitigate the disruption that everyone is feeling, and supporting the wider community. Those are the three key pillars for us right now.
Fantastic. So Wayne Butterfield here. Thanks, James. I think one of the things I've been really impressed with over the last few months is really how numerous software organizations have really helped in general the fight, whether it be software for free and just applying thought leadership and support, and it's been really helpful. I mean, one of the things I could really do with right now, James, is someone to answer the door and someone to look after my 2-year-old child who's decided to come and visit me. So again, one of the challenges that we have with working from home, as you mentioned, is my wife. She works for the NHS. She is at work now, and I'm at home working with my daughter. So apologies if you hear a small squeaky voice. It's not me. So just thinking about the purpose of today's webinar, really it's about applying our thought leadership and our experience of working with clients, speaking with the software vendors, and really getting an understanding of where can we help, what are the actions that organizations need to take in order to help mitigate, certainly can't mitigate everything, but help. Whether that's protect revenue, whether that's protecting roles, whether that's just keeping the lights on, as James mentioned. And there's four real actions here that we're going to run through today. And James and I hopefully are going to provide some real insights into the challenges that we're seeing with our clients, and B, some of the steps that you should be thinking about taking in order to help you mitigate and progress over the next few months as we figure out how the world is going to work post COVID-19. So it's four business critical actions here Some of these are very short term, medium term, but we still have to think about the long term also. Let's quickly move on to the first one. So reassess your business critical processes for automation opportunity. I think what we certainly found over the last few months is that we are no longer able to do everything we were doing before. And actually, that is not as bad as what it sounds like. The number of clients that I've been speaking with who have advised me on tasks that they were doing, that they are no longer doing, and guess what? Nobody is missing it. One of the things that I think we've got out of this is that a lot of things are done. We don't necessarily know the reasons why, and it takes something like a significantly reduced resource pool in order to help us really understand what is critical and what's not. Things that are critical, bringing in revenue, bringing in cash into the business, servicing our customers. And there's a lot of other things that we do that, although we feel like they're quite important, potentially are not. If I think about some of the things that are really critical for some of our clients at the moment, we look at one of our banking clients, or a number of our banking clients at the moment, a process that was maybe a few hundred applications a month for a mortgage holiday has suddenly catapulted into the tens and hundreds of thousands in just days. Mortgages for our banking clients have been a revenue stream, and suddenly with a mortgage holiday process that we have in the UK, where a lot of financial service organisations are offering a 3-month holiday for usually a large outlay in your mortgage. This process absolutely previously completed manually and easily done so because there was just a few hundred of these a month. Not quite the same experience when you've got hundreds of thousands of these coming in. And likewise for one of our other credit card provider clients, again, the payment holiday of not paying your bill for 3 months. Again, this was a process that was in place. They were a few thousand requests a month, and again now they're getting over 10,000 requests a day. So real challenges that have catapulted into an organization's lap over the last few months. Ones that really automation can absolutely play a role in. So what do you need to do?
Wayne, it strikes me that this is actually quite a good indicator where companies have genuinely scalable processes. They'll be dealing with this. Those processes will continue to operate. So there's a good little red flag here that maybe COVID-19 is bringing to companies, where it's highlighting which processes don't really scale. And as those companies want to grow their business, when business returns to normal, if they fix those processes now to deal with those influx of new requests, hopefully they'll stay fixed and bring them business benefit in the future.
Absolutely. I think that's what this has shown in that, and again, we'll talk a little bit about this later on, but certainly if you think about increases in volumes and decreases in your people capacity, those two things just don't go together. So absolutely, scaling is certainly something to be aware of, and I think this is, as you say, it's shining lights on things that we probably weren't thinking about. It wasn't necessarily keeping us up at night pre-COVID-19, but so there's definitely, I think, green shoots of positivity that can come out of what this crisis has enabled businesses to do. They've had to think very differently. They've had to make prioritizing. They've had to reprioritize processes and actions. And those are the types of things that you just wouldn't have necessarily had the time or even the balls to do. You just wouldn't have had the real drive in order to do a lot of the things that we're having to do in order to just survive at the moment. Thinking about these actions, these are the things that you need to be doing. Elimination rather than automation is certainly something that we should be thinking about. What is what is it that we were doing that we are no longer doing that nobody is missing? And as much as we're talking here about automation, actually the best form of automation is to not do something in the first place, rather than automate a bad process. Let's just not do it in the first place. What are the examples that you have in your organization where you're not doing something now, and guess what? The lights are still on in the business. Thinking about, again, the examples we showed earlier on the mortgage holiday, the payment holiday, with less people, with significantly more volume, where can automation add value into those particular processes? And there are countless examples of where there's a lot of processes that are no longer happening. There is a lot more where you're absolutely seeing that large increase in volumes. This is the bread and butter of automation. This is really where we should be targeting some of these automation tools. And then if you think about automating tasks, which historically did not have a business case, a really important business critical processes that did not have a business case when you looked at it from an FTE saving perspective. When you now look at how critical that particular process is to the running of the business, let's ignore the fact that it didn't make a great business case from an FTE saving perspective and start thinking about how critical it is to the business. And the best example I can think of is a recent client. The saving from automating the process was less than half an FTE. But as a result of that process not being completed now, they've lost $3 million in revenue. Now, that process, had it have been automated, would have protected that revenue stream. And I can guarantee that return on investment, if you'd have looked at the criticality of the process versus the saving that you may have got from an FTE perspective, it's a no-brainer. We just weren't looking at end-to-end value that something creates. We have historically in times been quite focused on what is the saving I can make now versus actually what am I protecting in the future. And again, we speak about the different lenses that the COVID-19 crisis has brought. I think that's a perfect one. James, anything more that you can think of in this section? What more can people, what should they be thinking about here?
I think you pretty much covered it. We're all very busy all the time, and sometimes, and you can pay management consultants millions of dollars to tell you this, sometimes one of the best things you can do is stop doing the day-to-day activity and take a step back and actually look at what you're doing, figure out, are these the right things to be doing? And if we've got this forcing function making us do that, we should, take advantage of that. So yeah, if we can take a step back and think, this thing here that we've always done, do we really need to still be doing it? That elimination or reduction piece. If we have less people making those hard decisions, and historically those hard decisions about what we need to stop doing have been the province often of very senior management. And I think these days we all need to be those leaders and look at the jobs around us, look at the work around us, and take those hard decisions about, maybe the things that we need to not be doing today.
Fantastic. And if we think then about, we touched upon this there, the savings resulting from automation have historically looked predominantly at FTE and headcount. ISG research tells you that there's only 7% of our of clients that have responded to the annual ISG survey that have created a sustainable, high value, at scale automation practice. And there's a couple of things that they all have in common. The one that I really want to pull out today is that they look far beyond FTE saving as a reason to automate. And again, this is I think absolutely critical that one of the things we really need to be thinking about is overall value of a process, not just now when everything is running smooth and there's people there. But, what happens if that process cannot run? What happens if people aren't there? How critical is this process? And therefore, what value do we need to attribute to it when we're looking at an automation business case? Thinking about a couple of examples here. I've got two e-commerce clients, both of them reasonably recently have automated their order fulfillment. So there was a number of different exceptions that were coming out from their website that were manually entered. They were only manually entered 9 to 5. They were manually entered by people. And that's their key revenue stream. If they do not dispatch their product, they do not bring in revenue and profit. These guys were both very lucky that, within the last 3 months, pre-COVID-19, they were able to automate those types of processes. But what are the processes in your business that bring in revenue, and what level of automation is attributed to those at the moment? That should certainly be something that we should be thinking about. And likewise, I really like this other example. So a telco client of ours, again, through a recent process discovery, we found a process completed in their billing team that was around about 0.2 FTEs worth of effort. So quite a small amount of effort. That in itself would not have made a great business case. However, we looked further upstream, and what we found was when this particular process went well, the actual impact to the customer was hundreds and thousands of calls from disgruntled customers about their bill coming in. And the actual impact was every quarter there were tens of FTEs worth of additional volumes coming into their contact centers. So again, you look just at the process, very small saving. You look at the impact of that process not being completed correctly in this case, very, very large impact, bit of a no-brainer. And again, there will be processes in your organization that are that important. And on their own, looking at if you just look through that FTE lens, probably not fantastic. If you look more broadly, more wider, as are the real pioneers in the space, those that are really pushing the envelope, they're looking more broader. They're really starting to reap the benefits of that. So what do you need to do? So again, I think we need to be looking at the criticality of a process versus the amount of headcount that is associated with it. You can start doing this now. What are the processes that make our business tick? Not necessarily the processes that take the most people. And there is definitely a difference in those. And often, you find that you have a lot of people associated with a process that makes your business tick. That's absolutely fine. Where can automation play, or where should automation play a role? One of the things that we need to be mindful of, and James, I'll bring you in here absolutely, is if you're not thinking today about the future, and you're not thinking about the next 3 months and beyond, it's likely that anyone involved in automation is going to be incredibly, incredibly busy. You're going to have to reprioritize. You're really going to have to look at, if you've got a pipeline of activity at the moment, it's probably going to be significantly increased. Vendors, implementation partners, and the like are all going to be incredibly, incredibly busy. Start planning now. Get to the front of the queue, and then ensure that you are the organization that's making quick headway once we get out of the challenges that we're in now. And I guess, James, from an Automation Anywhere perspective, you're seeing the same type of scenarios internally as well.
Yeah, we are. I mean, I would almost go, I'd actually go a little bit further than that. And forgive me if I sound like I'm just saying, please buy more automation software. I'm genuinely not saying that. But if you have people right now who have less work than they normally would, for whatever reason, there's stuff they can't do, maybe turn them into automation engineers. Not permanently, but maybe say to people, listen, we've got 3 months. We can teach you how to automate stuff in a week or two. It's not beyond the wit of man to do that. And get people to look at either the part of the business that they're in, or maybe a bit further afield. But take those people who are more idle than they would normally be, and take that extra time and create an automation task force. Don't wait for lockdown to finish. People can build automations from home. I would actually get started on that big pile. So prioritize that wish list of automation. But I'll go further than that. Start automating. In an ideal world, those people would be doing their day jobs, which are good and productive for the company, we hope. But if they can't do those day jobs, then get them doing something else. And maybe that other thing, which can be done from home and can be done by pretty much anyone with a modern platform, certainly with our platform, is to start automating.
Fantastic. Yeah, great advice there. Third on the list is rethink how we're servicing our customers. Now, I don't know about you, but I've had some horrendous experiences quite recently with regards to organizations that I need to make contact with about their product or service. And you know what? I'm understanding. I understand the way that we are, the challenges that we have as both an employer and an employee, as a buyer and a consumer. I understand all of this. But one of the things that I've always believed in is that the way that you act in a crisis lives long in the memory, both positively and negatively. So yes, we are in a challenging time to serve our customers. But there are some great examples of how organizations are attempting to ease the burden on their advisors. And how they are using technology in order to do that. So first one, I think I want to just very quickly touch upon the use of attended automation on the desktop. We have a client who are making use of a lot of their back office staff that are no longer busy doing what they would do. They very quickly trained them up on a specific contact reason. They provided them with an attended automation solution to complete the transaction, and then they've given them a script so that they're able to get people into the contact channels to serve customers in a very quick turnaround with a very limited scope. They're using technology and just basic scripting, to give them a script to talk through, minimal training, really helping to support their frontline staff. Amazing work there. And likewise, we've got a banking client, and there's a number of these examples actually very quickly spun up chatbot capability on their website to help with, 5, 10, 15 commonly asked questions about the COVID situation and other things that are likely to be impacting their customers. So two great examples of where, trying to ease the burden and create a better service. There are also some really bad examples as well. For those that are not aware of my background, I spent a lot of time in digital customer service, a real early pioneer alongside automation. And digital channels, I think, have been an absolute blessing for the vast majority of us. I see some really bad examples of where organizations have turned off digital in favor of the phone, creating a really long wait time for customers, often hours. So you're waiting on a phone for hours to get through to an advisor who's then working from home. The connection drops because of their poor bandwidth. And, you as a consumer are absolutely frustrated as anything. And that's happened, more than once, at least to me. And I'm sure I'm not the only person. So, really a bitter taste in my mouth as a result of that. So there are great examples of how organizations are helping. There's also some really bad examples as well. And then if we start to think about, some of the reasons for this and what we can really do, I think the first thing we need to do is be understanding. As you can hear with myself, I'm at home with my 2-year-old who wants her daddy to go play with her. Our colleague here, Amit, he's working with his daughter sat on his shoulders. Do you know what? I haven't quite done that in the office, at least for a very, very long time. So, everyone's trying their best, but they're working in very different circumstances. And so you need to be thinking about what are the type of activities that people can do in the scenarios that they find themselves in, at home, with children, without children, with pets, with good connectivity, without good connectivity. So we really need to be thinking about not only can you just lift and shift a person from the office to their home, but you need to be thinking about the type of work that they can and they can't do. And for that work that they can't do, where can automation play a role? Again, we're often seeing new queries coming into new types of queries. We're also seeing large spikes in existing queries. I mean, we spoke about this from a volume perspective from processing, but we're also seeing that in the context as well. So, what is it that we can be doing in this space with regards to quickly spinning out either chatbot and voice bot type interactions. Maybe James, you can talk about this, but the ability to spin up online forms, so forms online that you can feed into digital workers in order to even remove the need to actually speak to a person. And I think that you guys have, again, you mentioned the German example there, but I guess that is something that your clients certainly are taking advantage of at the moment, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is it's something we're seeing not just in Germany, it's something we're seeing all over the world. Yeah, another good example is in the US, there's a payroll protection program. So this is loan processing. But yeah, extracting data from applications, entering that information into loan origination portals, but doing it very quickly, doing it efficiently, doing it accurately. The last thing you want is to have your application sent back to you because you've made a mistake in a zip code or in a spelling of a surname. But yeah, there are lots of mundane tasks that are new ones that COVID-19 has kind of put on our plates. A lot of them around accessing, government or federal support. Filling in those forms, make sure they're done quickly and accurately, taking data from the right place, cross-checking that data where necessary. It's a brilliant application for automation.
Fantastic. And then if we think, obviously, the other thing to be considering is actually where are your customers starting their journey? And, for most, they're not starting their journey by picking up their phone, magically understanding what your telephone number is and phoning you. So where can you interject customers earlier on in their journey and remove the need for a person who's probably got, 1,000 calls or chats or messenger interactions in their queue already? How can you do your bit to actually take away some of that additional pressure that your contact center staff are experiencing at the moment? And I guess one of the reasons why a lot of organizations are really struggling is that and I certainly have been part to this in the past. Business continuity is never really keeping me up at night. Now I know for a fact that there are people on this call and others where business continuity is absolutely things that they live for. That is their thing, and this is their real time to shine. I think for a lot of organizations, and certainly the ones I've been involved in historically, business continuity planning basically looked at when you have an issue in one place, we move to another, and it still generally included people. In fact, if we actually look at some of our sourcing metrics, we look at best practice from an in-house and an outsource. It's always 70% in-house, you're 30% outsourced. Great. It's all to do with people. And for most of the time, I think having people available in different locations clearly has been very successful, really until now, because it doesn't matter whether you're in the Philippines, you're in India, or you're in the UK, we're all experiencing something that is stopping us from being able to complete our daily work, our daily lives as we were before. And we've actually seen some reasonably large impacts here. So a number of our BPO clients, and I know we've got a lot of service providers on the phone today, have really struggled with challenges with regards to this. So this having people, regardless of having multiple locations, everybody globally experiencing the same issue of varying different degrees, but generally having challenges with no longer being able to have, large openings, where we can all go to work, all having to work from home, and the challenges that presents. And when you're a people business, when you're selling people, like ourselves at ISG and our service provider friends, there's a real challenge there. So starting to think about, what does that digital worker mix need to look like in order to try and protect revenue as we move into the future. And then another example, which is a really interesting one, and there are some things that you do in life where you didn't plan to do it, but what you have done has actually been a huge benefit. So we've got a financial services client who really was standing up their new digital workforce, and they basically planned 2 years in advance for where they were aiming to get to, and they started
I think we may have lost Wayne.
Okay, let me pick up there. I won't go to talk about what Wayne was talking about, but I'll kind of segue into it. So one of my hopes with a lot of this is, there's no doubt that some of the companies who have already, as Wayne was saying, some of the companies that have already engaged on their automation journey, quite thoroughly, they have a reasonable or a large amount of automation in their companies. I think in general, those companies are more resilient, and to things like this where all of a sudden your human workforce is compromised in some way, they either can't work or there are restrictions on how much they work or the activities they can do. So I think one of my hopes is that this makes us all take stock about how we build better companies going forward. I think there's a huge contrast between companies that, the digital native companies that we see succeeding in every walk of life, whether it's Amazon or Google or Uber or Facebook or whatever. Those companies, and I used to work for IMEX Amazon, and the mindset in those companies, which is if there's something that can be done with technology, then do it with technology and save humans, your valuable, your precious human resource. Save your humans for doing things that only humans can do, coming up with strategy, being creative, dealing with other humans. And I hope as people navigate their way out of the disruption caused by the pandemic, that they will go more down that route. I think the last thing anyone ever wants to see is a human doing kind of boring, repetitive, very rules-based work, whereas computers don't mind. Computers don't feel that pain and that boredom. So I think hopefully those ways, that mix as we moved more to having automation where automation is suitable will be good. I think the business continuity piece that Wayne was talking about is really interesting. Resilience comes often from having, from spreading your bets, from making sure you have the right mix. And I think that as people start to re-examine their business continuity, look at what's worked and what hasn't, I think we'll find that automations are more of it. Okay, Wayne, do we have you back on the call now?
I am, and I can't even blame my 2-year-old for that. I don't know what happened, but again, it must have been me talking about some of my experiences of working from home with call center agents where the phone just drops, and I've just had it there. So again, one of the other challenges we heard live.
What you were giving us there exactly was a fantastic example of where working from home can be problematic when you're having to use lots of pieces of technology. Thanks, that was wonderfully done.
I think I have probably every example of working from home not being ideal. Children, calls cutting, you name it. So at least the sun is shining though here, at least in the UK. So thank you for stepping in there, James. And good to say now. Literally, we're almost at the Q&A. So let's just finish the BCP thing. And again, I think the really interesting thing here is that certainly me myself, I have not looked at business continuity planning as being so important historically, and I've always looked at it as this ability to have people in different locations. And in fact, every BCP plan I've ever put in place outside of the technology one is always that. So really interesting now to think how we need to review BCP in light of COVID-19, and also how this really needs to amplify the number of digital workers and the reliance on digital workers moving forward. I think it's really important now that we start to look at our mix between people and digital workers rather than onshore, offshore, in-house, outsourced. We really need to start looking at the mix of digital workers in our business, because they are the ones who can keep the lights on even if we're not actually in the office. So I think, again, really, really important that mix is reviewed by organizations. And I think with that, Org, love to get you back on. I know we've got a number of questions that have come in. Fantastic if you can compare this. And again, thanks everyone for listening, and please do send your questions in.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a few that have come in, Wayne, so I'll start wading through them, if you will, and perhaps get both you and James to give your thoughts on a couple of them. First one that was up is, when people talk about the new normal, what period of time are they referring to? Is it this chaotic time is it the new normal now, or will it be the new normal after a vaccine? Maybe Wayne, what are your thoughts, and then I'll get some from James as well.
I think the new normal is now. I think what we need to remember that even when there's a vaccine, even when everything gets back to, what you might class as normality, we need to be extremely mindful that if this, or when it happens again, the economy, business cannot survive another challenging time like we've had now. So what we are doing, how we are working, what we are thinking about, this is the new norm. We need to be taking this mindset and we need to be thinking about how does our business survive the next 10 years in a world where, within a 2-month period, everything is absolutely on its head. We talk about disruption of an industry. This is disruption of the world. And so we need to be thinking about this is the new norm now. How we deal with that, clearly we're not going to fix these problems tomorrow. But I think we need to be thinking about it as in now. This is the time. This is the new normal. And if we get back to where we were previously, working in the office with our colleagues and all of that stuff, great. But we need to make sure that this plan B is not a plan B, it's a plan A.1. It almost needs to be the new norm. James, you?
So I think there's two answers to this. I agree, Wayne. This is the new norm at the moment. But for me, it'll be interesting to see how much that new normal way of us working and living goes back. Once the immediate threat of the virus goes away, it'll be interesting to see how much our working and other patterns go back to where they were before, because they won't go back all the way. There are some things, I think there'll be some fundamental changes. And I'll pick maybe a slightly obvious one, and that's business travel. Will we start seeing people in meeting rooms again? Yes, of course we will. But will we go back to the same level of, traveling around the world that I'm sure we've all experienced? You jump on a plane for 6 hours to go and do a 25-minute meeting. Will we still be doing that? Sometimes, yes. But as much as we did before, now that we've all become accustomed to the kind of the social and technical aspects of video conferencing, I think I'd be very reluctant to say that there won't be some fairly fundamental changes in travel for work. So that's one example where I think the new normal will change in the medium and long term as well as the short term.
Yeah, great, guys. Thanks for that. I would say that I think if you look years ago, no one would have ever thought that the new normal would have been a ride-sharing service called Uber. And now it's almost a de facto. In fact, we exchanged that name for a taxi these days. So the new normal, it continues to move and evolve. Another question, that perhaps this one is one I'll take because it's a little bit related back to our sourcing business within ISG. But the question was, what percentage of RFPs for ITO and BPO mandate digital workers as a mix of the overall fulfillment model? So my answer to that question is 100%. Now, that's a provocative answer at the start, but we have advised for years, it goes back probably 7 years ago where we first saw the effects of automation and driving price points in an ITO, big, large ITO contract, right? And so that kind of started it out. Up until that point, we had not seen automation really drive price points or capabilities. This day and age, automation is everywhere, and therefore, really 100% of the contracts that we see executed have a component on automation, be that BPO, be that ITO, whether it's service desk, whether it's a finance and accounting back office process. So it's everywhere, and we certainly are advising on that in our core sourcing business, and we're certainly enabling that from the ISG automation business. Next question, and I'll throw this one out to James first, and then Wayne, you can take it. Have you witnessed network data security as a driver for automation, specifically in the COVID times? James?
I don't think we've seen it any more, specifically in COVID times. security in general, and I'd widen it past just network and data security. Security, you can definitely boost security across pretty much anything you do by using automation, for the simple reason that you don't, robots are far less likely to be bad actors than people. We've just really, and it's quite a big topic. We've just released our new bot security framework, which is a set of accreditations. It's a kind of four-part thing. I won't go into the detail of it, but it's a way to certify and accredit your security around automation. And the reason we did that was consumer demand, was market demand. So yes, network security, data security, security around all things is a big driver at the moment. We live in one big global world. There are plenty of bad actors out there who would love to take the nice stuff you have. And as automation becomes more and more prevalent, people will figure out ways that will attack automation programs. We need to make sure we're one step ahead of the game.
Great. And if you think about information security as well, we suddenly got a huge increase in the number of people that are now, previously in an organization would have had a clear desk policy. You're not even allowed to have a pen and paper. Suddenly, these people are working from home with people that don't actually work for your organization, accessing customer information. And you know what? There's not a great deal we can do about it at the moment, short-term measures. And I can imagine that there are a lot of information security people who are just having sleepless nights about the lacks that their organization, the rules that they're having to break in order to just service their customers at the moment. And obviously, you don't have those challenges if you have automated some of these processes, even some of the attended processes. So there's definitely a role for automation here, and haven't necessarily seen a huge spike in demand yet, but I think it's something that will filter through over the next couple of months.
Yeah, great. Thanks, guys, on that one. Before the next question, I just want to make sure I raise attention to everyone. Effective today, in fact, I think it's out there now on our website. We have published an article for your consumption out on the ISG website, so I'll direct you to that for some additional information about this particular webinar and some information on if you've got some more specific questions, who to direct those to within our organization. So I call your attention to that article on our website. Next question that came in, are there limitations to business size or work volumes where deploying automation makes the most sense? Any thoughts on that in terms of business size or work volumes? Maybe Wayne, take a first crack at that.
Yeah, so clearly, the bigger the business, it's likely the bigger the opportunity. And I'm hoping James will be able to talk a little bit about how AA help with some of the smaller organizations. Automation is there for everybody. If you think about the complexity of the tools, simple, can be picked up. There's so much content online to be able to at least give yourself a bit of a head start. So yes, you're not going to be saving millions if you're not spending millions. But absolutely, regardless of the size of the organization, there is a role for automation to play in your business. And the tools themselves, whether it's a big enterprise or a small to medium enterprise, to your local business, absolutely there is a role for these technologies in your organization. And as I say, there is so much useful content available now online. It's just an absolute goldmine of and support, and obviously having partners like an ISG, as well as obviously technology like AA and James. Talk about some of the stuff certainly for smaller businesses, because I think everyone knows that this works really well in big businesses. But what's your view on where automation can help some of the smaller businesses that don't have hundreds of thousands or millions to spend on getting going?
So for me, it applies to every size business. And Wayne, you're quite right. If you're a big business, yeah, there are some big opportunities there. But the opportunities may be smaller for smaller businesses, but not relatively so. If you show a major multinational a way to save, $50 or $100 million, that might be less significant than if you show an SME how to save $500,000, in a year. And the example, there's two examples I'll give. If you have a back office, finance, procurement, and a logistics department of, it's not 2,000 people, it's maybe 20 or 30 people. If automation would let you redeploy, say 15 or 20% of those people, 20% is a good finger in the air number of where we think how much we can automate. In those functions where there hasn't been any sort of significant automation. If I went to you as the business owner and said, there's 20 or 30 people, I'm going to show you a way to free up, 5 or 6 of them to go off and do other things. Does that have value to you? And the answer is yes, it has enormous value. Yeah, that's the difference between your business maybe growing by 20% that year or staying flat. The other example I'll give you is for micro SMEs. Before I was at Automation Anywhere, I did some startups, and one of the startups I did, my own startup, I did a rural telecoms company. We did microwave telecoms, and the company still exists. I sold it a few years ago, but it still goes. It has 1,000 customers. It did reasonably well. The only way I could have started that business and run that business was by a heavy use of automation. And when myself and my wife built the business from the ground up, we automated absolutely everything we could in finance, in procurement, in dealing with suppliers, in dealing with installers. Every possible touch point we had into the business was automated. So if I wanted to look at the state of the business, at any point, bang, I pressed the button and I got the reports. If I wanted to make sure we paid everything, bang, it just all happened. And if I built that business maybe in a more traditional or old school way with people, the first thing I would have had to have done was to hire 4 or 5 people to do all of those things that otherwise would have had to automate. 4 or 5 people cost me 150, 200,000 pounds a year just in salaries to get office space and all that stuff, and the business was dead in the ground before it even got started. So automation can be a boon, whether you're a one-man band and you want to use maybe a community edition or something, or whether you're a 100-person SME, or whether you're a 50,000-person multinational global enterprise.
Great, thanks for that, guys. Here's a theme that's come through a couple of different times in a couple of different ways, and I'll take the first answer, then certainly ask for any input on it. In these difficult times, people are cutting their regular expenses. Any automation program will need investment up front. How can the automation be pushed during these times? We've had a couple of questions that have kind of been phrased that way. The first, I'll answer this one, because at ISG, we certainly see that and realize that. One of the differentiators that we have in the marketplace is a very, I'll call it a varied set of deal structures that we operate in. We're quite happy to work on really a gain-sharing type model where we basically share in the savings that are produced as a result of the automation program. We can certainly defer those fees that are typically paid up front. And so very creative on a deal structure that allows for firms that perhaps are not in a position to be able to float a big investment up front for us to get involved in that from a commercial structure. We certainly have a fixed fee type arrangement. We certainly have a time and materials type arrangement. So a good variety of ways that we'll share in the risk and the savings that come about. So James, maybe your thoughts on that quickly in terms of from an Automation Anywhere standpoint, and certainly even in the software side, we work with you on some of those deal structures as well, as a partner.
So we've seen a bit of a split. We've seen a surprisingly large amount of our current, prospects, and certainly our existing customers, who are scaling up their automation, saying, we know these are uncertain times, but this is too important. That we are still going to have a business in a month, in 3 months, in 12 months. If we stop now with our automation project, we're adding insult to injury, or adding injury to injury. So some companies, and a hearteningly large amount, are seeing their automation programs for the strategically important things that they are and that they need to keep on doing. We do have other prospects who say, listen, we want, the people in the business say we want to do this, but all budgets have been put on hold. That's been quite a common thing. And so, like you guys, we say, come and have a conversation with us. We can be flexible. We are a successful, well-funded software company. We would rather do a deal with people than say, well, it's money now or never. So we can be pretty flexible on the deals we do. But even if people can't do that, we still want them to carry on thinking, planning. We're there to support them in that whole planning process, because we will all come out of this. This is not going to go on forever. We will come out of this. There will be a backlog. I think companies will be surprised, as Wayne said earlier, that they may find themselves more at the back of the queue. We don't want to put anyone at the back of the queue, but the companies that engage and work with us, they're the ones who will get all our time and attention just because they put their hands up.
No, thanks for that, James, for sure. Let me move on to the next question that's out there, and this is one that, again, I'll take a cut at it because it has to do with some of our engagement structures for some of the service delivery that we as ISG perform. How do you think the automation initiative can be implemented or deployed in a remote context with users and automation consultants working from home? So it's a great question. We're certainly dealing with that in the context of the new normal. We've got some of our larger engagements that we have that we're really executing on now in a total virtual mode. We practice this when we're not engaged with the clients. We bring our teams together and we actually practice virtual, with interviews through WebEx or other collaboration tools and mediums. And we do that internally. We then prepare for the interchange with the client. Certainly the development can be done remotely, but we are very well versed at a virtual world. Most of our consultants and service delivery resources travel around all the time anyway. We're used to doing that in more of a virtual basis. But it's not this by accident. We actually practice and rehearse the methods that we use and the collaboration tools that we use to ensure they're very hardened and are able to be used. But this will not stop any of our engagements, and certainly we can enable automation programs in that way. Maybe one or two more questions. I've got one that's out there. I'll pose it both to Wayne and James. And the question is framed, look, I've got 10,000 documents. My delivery staff at the processing center is on work from home, so half-time basis. Where do I begin? Wayne, what do you think?
Well, simple answer is automation, right? The more detailed answer is really understanding a few things. Of those 10,000, what's the variation? How many different suppliers? You really need to figure out what is the volume of different documents. What that does is it doesn't necessarily limit the amount of automation, but it limits the amount of time that you need to actually automate that process. So really understanding those 10,000 in a bit more detail is where I would start personally. And then there are numerous tools, including IQBot, which would be perfect from a machine learning and OCR perspective, and to pick that up. But James, I don't want to steal your thunder from that particular challenge.
This is, this sounds like, my assumption is this is about document classification and analysis. So what are all these documents? Question one, what are all these documents? Question two, how do I extract the useful data out of it with a pretty high success rate? And I'm not talking about OCR, 89%. I'm talking about 99% plus success rate. We have a technology called IQBot that Wayne just mentioned. IQBot is artificial intelligence, machine learning. One of the big use cases for it is exactly that, document classification and analysis. It reads documents. It has both, guided and unguided learning. It's exactly for the problem that you've just mentioned. So the simple answer is pick up the phone to ISG or Automation Anywhere, or both of us, and say, I've got 10,000 documents, and I might have 1 million more coming down the pipeline. How can you quickly automate the processing of those documents? This is what we do for a living.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. And actually, that's a real example. Clients called in with that. So listen, Wayne, thanks so much. James, thank you so much to our audience. Appreciate your attention. With that, I'll turn it, and by the way, safe wishes to everyone. And Jillian, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, everyone. This does conclude our time today. We appreciate you joining this ISG Smart Talk. As mentioned, the recording of this webinar will be available to share with your colleagues at the same link as the live event. You can also download a PDF of today's slides in the Event Resources section. If you'd like to speak with Jeff, Wayne, or any of our ISG advisors, please reach out to us at www.isg-one.com. And James with Automation Anywhere can be reached at james.denning@automationanywhere.com. Thanks very much for listening.